court, and those runaway Texas Democrats, they are now suing Governor Greg Abbott and other Republican leaders for trying to bring them back to the Lone Star State. The almost 24 Democrats accusing the governor of depriving them of their civil liberties and causing anxiety because they've been separated from their families. Meanwhile, a judge just issued an order that temporarily blocks the Democrats from being arrested if they go back to Texas. So let's bring in our legal eagles now. Criminal defense attorney Brian Claypool and Cal Berkeley law professor John Yoo. Welcome back, gentlemen.
Hi, Shannon.
Hi, Shannon.
Exhibit A, this comes from the complaint filed by the Democrats. Plaintiff, they've been deprived of liberty for substantial periods of time, suffered much anxiety and distress over separation from their families, and much discomfort and embarrassment, and their reputations impaired, and have lost much time from their homes and the companionship and care of their families. And John, they're blaming the governor for that.
They don't have a lawsuit here. They're claiming that there's a constitutional right to not do their jobs. They were elected by their constituents, the only ones to show up in Austin and participate in the development and passage of legislation. They're leaving, they're acting like children. They're refusing to play the game because they might lose. There's no racial discrimination going on. The government actually hasn't hold of them and depriving them of their liberty. All they're being asked to do is show up in the Capitol and perform the jobs that their constituents elected them to office to do.
Well, now apparently it will not involve getting arrested because there have been talk if they came back to the state of Texas, they would be arrested and forced to go back in and vote and do all that kind of stuff. Judge says for now, can't do it. Exhibit B, this is Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick talking about the lawsuit.
Suing us for the fact that you left and we separated from your families. Guess what? You can hug your wife and husband tomorrow morning, get on a damn plane and fly back here.
Brian.
Hey, Shannon, this is one of those rare cases that offers us a glimpse into the fractures of our political system. Sometimes lawsuits aren't the best remedy. Here you got Governor Abbott. He's being a bully. He's threatening these legislators. You better get back here or we're going to arrest you and ruin your lives and have you thrown in jail. And then you've got Democrats over here not doing their job and not coming back to the state legislature. So really, we should maybe have a new code of conduct for state legislators and maybe federal as well, that if you don't do your job, you will be subject to suspension and kicked out of legislative office. Because if you and I and John didn't show up, we'd get kicked out. But real quick, on the merits, the most persuasive argument here, I think, is it's where Governor Abbott is retaliating and threatening these state legislators for exercising their First Amendment rights of free speech. And that arguably is the best constitutional argument that the Democrats have in this case.
Well, one of the other arguments, and John, you referred to this earlier, Exhibit C, this is also from their complaint. They say plaintiffs will show that defendants have embarked upon a course of conduct which is intended to violate state and federal constitutional rights of the plaintiffs and the classes of citizens they represent by denying rights under the First, Fifth, and 14th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution because of, and they list several things, but the first one is race. John.
There's no discrimination going on here. The state is saying every legislator who's fled the state and is refusing to show up and vote is going to be grabbed by the police and potentially subject to jail. Has nothing to do with the race of the legislator, the sex of the legislator. It's just saying people who don't show up and do their jobs are subject to arrest. So I don't see any intention, any animus on the part of the governor to punish people or single them out because of their race. And it's not about their speech either. They're free to say what they want. These legislators are free to make their case against the legislation. All the government is saying is show up and do your legislative duty, which is to vote on the bill.
So takes us to Exhibit D. Margot Cleveland, writing in the Federalist, says runaway Texas Democrats go rabid in ridiculous lawsuit against Governor Greg Abbott. She writes, here is where the initial hilarity starts, with the complaint alleging the defendant's conduct was because of race, in that certain plaintiffs are either black or white. That's actually a quote from the lawsuit. I did see that. Yes, everyone has a race, but no, that does not create a claim of race discrimination. These plaintiffs, however, never allege any conduct that violated their constitutional rights. Brian, we present Exhibit D.
Well, look, I'd love to tell you this is a racial discrimination case. John's probably right. It isn't, but it is Governor Abbott interfering with the constitutional rights of these state legislators to go to Washington, D.C., to exercise their free speech in D.C., and not at the same time be subject to bullying, threats, retaliation. You're going to jail if you come back. That is a government entity interfering with the rights of these legislators. And look, Shannon, if this case by the Democrats had zero merits, then why did a judge grant a temporary restraining order that's going to enjoin Governor Abbott from trying to arrest these Democrats when they come back to Texas?
Well, I do remember from law school, the bar exam, and all those years of practice that there are sanctions for things that you file if a judge ultimately finds that it's been frivolous or completely without merit, or at least some basis. So we're going to watch this, just like we do that separate order from a different judge about not arresting them. In the meantime, Brian and John, you guys are good sports to argue this case.
Thanks,
Thanks, Shannon.
Thank you, Shannon.